In the early dawn over the Sea of Azov, a Russian warship prepared to unleash destruction. But miles away, a team of Ukrainian operators watched in silence as 7 small drones built from parts bought online raced toward it. What followed would change naval warfare forever. If you want to understand how technology and tactics are rewriting the rules of modern conflict, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. Your support helps us continue bringing you real analysis from the front lines of modern warfare. At 5:30 in the morning, the calm surface of the Sea of Azov hit a storm that no radar could predict. A Russian Boyan M-class corvette sat quietly in the water, its launch tubes loaded with 8-caliber cruise missiles, each one capable of reaching deep into Ukrainian cities within minutes. For the Russian crew, it was just another day of routine readiness. For Ukraine, it was a race against time. Unbeknownst to the sailors on deck, 7 Ukrainian drones were already en route. Their engines, small and high-pitched, blended into the early dawn wind. The lead drone, codenamed Rybaka, accelerated past 250 miles per hour, closing in fast on its target. Russian coastal defense guns opened up, streaks of tracer fire, lighting the horizon like fiery threads. Each 23mm round had the power to shred a drone into fragments. But the gunners were shooting blind. The low light, combined with the drone's erratic flight paths, made aiming nearly impossible. As the gunfire intensified, every Russian outpost within 6 miles was alerted. What had started as a covert strike had now turned into a race against detection. The drone operator back in Ukraine, hundreds of miles away, watched his monitor flicker with static. Power lines loomed ahead, invisible until the last moment. Rybaka pulled up just in time, clearing the high-voltage cables by barely 6 feet. For 3 excruciating seconds, the feed went black. When the image returned, a radio tower filled the screen, its guy wires slicing through the dawn mist. The operator swerved hard left, missing by inches. 2 more drones followed close behind, spear units built not to strike, but to blind. Their mission: suppress radar and create confusion before the heavy hitters arrived. Meanwhile, 4 slower Bober drones took a northern route, each armed with a heavy warhead and moving at only 125 miles per hour. They were the hammer that would strike once the Rybakas cleared the path. But the Russians had already begun to adapt. The warning rippled across Russian communication networks. By the time the Ukrainian drones crossed the next checkpoint, a Repellent 1 jammer was already waiting. It unleashed 400 watts of electromagnetic noise, flooding the airwaves like a digital hurricane. The lead drone screen went dark. Signal lost. But the Ukrainians had planned for this exact moment. Each unit had pre-programmed waypoints and internal navigation systems. When contact broke, Rybaka switched into autonomous mode, using accelerometers and optical landmarks to guide itself through the interference. 3 minutes later, the video feed blinked back to life. The drone was exactly where it was supposed to be. Ahead, the road was blocked by a Russian BTR-82 armored vehicle, its heavy machine gun already spitting rounds in a fixed firing pattern. The operator dove into a nearby industrial area, using factory walls as cover. But that maneuver created a new danger. Russian soldiers were stationed in those same buildings. Hearing the whine of the drone's engines, they poured out, firing rifles and light machine guns into the morning air. At just 30 feet above the ground, the drone used the curvature of the Earth to its advantage. Low altitude created radar shadows. Systems that could see 30 miles at higher altitudes were blind to targets flying this low. Physics had become their shield. The drones threaded invisible corridors of safety while gunfire echoed through the streets. But not every machine made it through. Concentrated fire from a coordinated squad hit one of the Rybakas, tearing through its frame. The drone spiraled into a parking lot and detonated, its payload exploding on impact. Now only 2 Rybakas and 2 Bobers remained. The margin for error had vanished. As the surviving units neared their final waypoint, the lead operator suddenly froze. The image on his screen didn't match the mission briefing. Something massive, something unexpected, loomed ahead: a Russian Pantsir air defense system. Within seconds, it launched 6 missiles. These weren't standard surface-to-air interceptors. They were specialized anti-drone weapons, designed after earlier humiliations. And now, they were locked on. The sky over the Sea of Azov erupted. 6 Pantsir ME missiles streaked upward, each weighing about 26 pounds and carrying 200 tungsten spheres. Their warheads were designed to create a donut-shaped cloud of shrapnel, 10 feet wide, engineered specifically to destroy small, agile drones. The Russian gunner used laddered engagement tactics, launching missiles at different altitudes. One at 160 feet, another at 100, then 50. The idea was simple. No matter what altitude the drone flew, it would have to pass through at least one fragmentation zone, a three-dimensional box of death. But the Ukrainian operator knew this system better than most. He had studied Pantsir launch sequences frame by frame, and he knew its hidden flaw: a 1.2-second arming delay after launch. That delay was a safety feature, meant to keep the missiles from detonating too close to the launcher itself. At 270 miles per hour, Rybaka could cover nearly 500 feet in that time. The moment he saw the missile launch flares, the operator did something counterintuitive. He dove straight toward the Pantsir. The first missile passed overhead harmlessly, its fuse still unarmed. The second exploded too late, showering sparks into the air. By the time the missiles were ready to kill, the drone was already beneath them, using the system's own safety protocol as a shield. Now flying just 15 feet above the water, Rybaka leveled out, its camera fixed on the Podlet-K1 radar array, the eyes of the entire coastal defense network. If that radar fell, every Russian missile battery within 120 miles would go blind. The Pantsir's twin 30mm cannons roared to life, firing 10,000 rounds a minute. But the system was designed to hit incoming missiles, not unpredictable drones. The Russian fire control computer needed 3.5 seconds to calculate a firing solution. The drone changed direction every 2 seconds. The math never lined up. Rybaka slipped through the defensive curtain and slammed directly into the Podlet-K1 antenna. The shaped charge detonated with a flash so bright it overwhelmed nearby cameras. The Monroe effect, a phenomenon where an explosive crushes a copper cone into a hypersonic jet punched through the radar's armored housing at 23,000 feet per second, vaporizing everything in its path. The radar signal died instantly. The Podlet-K1, worth millions, was gone in less than a second. With the Podlet-K1 radar obliterated, a gaping hole opened in Russia's air defense network. The operators on the ground scrambled to compensate, switching to secondary systems. But the Ukrainians were not done. The second Rybaka had already locked onto its next target, the P-18 Spoon Rest radar, one of the oldest yet most critical early warning systems in the Russian arsenal. The Pantsir crew, now panicking, switched to thermal imaging mode. Yet as dawn broke over the Sea of Azov, the environment itself turned against them. A temperature inversion had formed a layer of cool air trapped beneath a warmer one, creating what pilots call thermal shimmer. It caused false heat signatures and distorted infrared readings. The drone's small electric motor gave off barely any heat, maybe 10 degrees above ambient. Against the warming morning sea, which still held the previous day's heat, Rybaka appeared as a cold spot, almost invisible. When it crossed over cooler land patches, it vanished completely. The Pantsir gunner, blinded by his own sensors, resorted to desperation tactics. He fired in expanding spiral patterns, spraying tracers in a wild attempt to guess where the drone might be. In less than 30 seconds, he burned through 5,000 rounds, hitting nothing. The second Rybaka struck the P-18 dead center. The explosion ripped through the radar's frame, wiping out nearly 125 miles of coverage. 2 radars gone, and the Russian corvette, sitting just 2.5 miles offshore, suddenly lost its shield. Without those systems feeding targeting data, the ship's onboard radar could only detect threats within 25 miles, giving the crew less than 2 minutes to react to incoming objects. On the bridge, alarms screamed. The captain barked orders, trying to restore the radar link, but the network was gone. The corvette that once hunted others was now blind and alone. As the Ukrainian operators watched from their bunker hundreds of miles away, their screens filled with static ghost signals flickering from the chaos. The Bober drones were next in line, heavy, slow, and lethal. Their warheads were designed for the kill shot. And now the Russian ship that had been preparing to launch missiles toward Ukrainian cities was itself the target. The Russian corvette's radar screens glowed with confusion. Every sweep of the antenna produced phantom echoes, tiny blips that appeared and vanished with the rhythm of the waves. The ship's sensors could not distinguish between a 3-foot-high drone and a 2-foot-high swell. The computer's clutter rejection algorithm, meant to filter out sea spray, was now filtering out real threats. Every third sweep erased the Ukrainian drones completely, mislabeling them as harmless noise. The Russian sailors had seconds, not minutes, to decide what was real. Then the ship's defensive systems came alive. The AK-630M2 Duet, a twin-barrel 30mm cannon system, spun up with a mechanical whine that vibrated across the deck. 10,000 rounds per minute tore into the air, each tracer streaking like molten lightning. The fire control computer tried to predict the drone's next position using Kalman filtering, a mathematical technique that forecasts motion by combining past and present data. It worked against cruise missiles that flew in predictable arcs. But against small, human-controlled drones that changed direction every 2 seconds, it was useless. The math never caught up. The Duet missed every shot. The corvette deployed its PK-10 decoy launchers, filling the air with aluminum chaff-thin strips designed to confuse radar-guided missiles. To the Ukrainian operators watching through their video feeds, the chaff looked like glittering confetti falling over the sea. They ignored it and kept flying. Next came the TK-25E electronic countermeasure suite, blasting out 200 watts across a vast range of frequencies from 20 MHz to 40 GHz. The airwaves screamed with static. Under normal conditions, this would have severed radio control. But the Bober drones used frequency-hopping spread spectrum, jumping across 128 channels every second in a random pattern. The jamming caused brief frame drops, video degrading from full HD to a grainy image, but the signal held. The Ukrainian pilots still had eyes on the target. The corvette captain ordered evasive S-turns at full throttle, but a 900-ton warship cannot outmaneuver physics. It took 15 seconds to shift 30 degrees, while the drones could pivot instantly. As the ship rolled, the first Bober lined up its final run. The radar mast filled the operator's screen, a tower of steel packed with sensors and transmitters. The Duet cannons couldn't depress below 5 degrees, leaving the drone in a blind spot. Machine gun fire from the deck erupted, but the human gunners were chasing ghosts. The drone crossed their view in less than a second, faster than the brain could focus, faster than the eye could track. The operator steadied his hands, breathed once, and locked on. The Bober drone roared in low, skimming just above the waves. Its target, the corvette's main mast, the cluster of radar and communication systems that linked the ship to every other unit in the fleet. At a range of 200 yards, the operator switched to manual control. His palms were slick with sweat. The mast filled the entire screen. The AK-630 Duet guns screamed one last time, but their barrels could not angle low enough to track the target. Sailors with PKM machine guns fired frantically from the deck, their bullets chasing empty air. The drone flashed past their sights in less than a second. Human reflexes simply could not match machine precision. The first Bober slammed into the mast. The explosion sheared through the radar arrays, communications links, and targeting systems in a single fiery instant. The corvette was blind. The ship that had been seconds from launching its caliber missiles now had no sensors, no guidance, and no coordination. But the Ukrainians weren't finished. The second Bober dove in from the port side at a 30-degree angle, aiming for the junction between frames 44 and 52, the section shielding the missile magazine. Behind that steel sat 8 caliber missiles, each armed and ready but not yet launched. The operator adjusted his aim, accounting for the ship's slow 8-knot drift and the 3-degree tilt from its last evasive maneuver. He had practiced this moment hundreds of times in simulation, but now, reality added tremors his hands couldn't hide. Sea spray streaked the lens. The target shimmered through haze. He pressed forward. The shaped charge hit exactly where it needed to. The explosion unleashed the Monroe effect, forming a jet of superheated copper that sliced through half an inch of steel like tissue. Inside the hull, flames erupted across hydraulic lines and electrical circuits. Fuel ignited. The warhead safety systems disengaged, leaving the stored missiles armed but useless. The corvette didn't sink, but it was finished. 12 hours later, the damaged vessel limped back to port, smoke pouring from its gutted superstructure. The cost of repair 18 months. If Russia could even find the parts. The Ukrainian team, watching from their bunker nearly 200 miles away, sat in silence. They had neutralized a $500 million warship with drones, assembled from off-the-shelf components, motors, and cameras sourced online. For the modern battlefield, it was a turning point. Technology had leveled the playing field. The sky, once ruled by billion-dollar systems, now belonged to anyone with ingenuity, courage, and a signal strong enough to guide a drone through the static. In the end, this wasn't just about drones or ships, it was about adaptation. Wars are no longer won by who has the biggest guns, but by who learns the fastest. In this battle, ingenuity defeated power. And that lesson is echoing across every sea, every border, and every command room on Earth. If you found this story insightful, subscribe and turn on notifications so you'll never miss another moment where history, strategy, and technology collide.